one of the things in life that makes me ridiculously happy, one of the very simple pleasures in life, is when there is a new foster carer memoir by one of my favourite foster carers. And one of those people is Casey Watson. I've read everything she's written. Her latest book, Mummy Please Don't Leave, came out last week. Obviously bought it and read it, and I'm really pleased with it. And I kind of knew I'd enjoy it, but when I read what the subject matter was, I was a bit nervous, because it's, out of all of the kind of general foster carer memoirs, when there's a mother and baby placement, I find them a little less engaging, unless the teenager, the mother, is an absolute tearaway. But none of this is the case here, but that's not to say the mother is innocent. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why this one's actually quite different. But I'm not going to give any spoilers in terms of the actions that are taken, or certainly what the outcome is. I will say, though, it is quite surprising. Often with these books, they're very predictable. Don't predict anything with this one. It is very intriguing. So, as I said, this is about a mother who already has a child. She's got a 4-year-old boy called Seth, and she has just given birth in prison to a little baby boy called Tommy. And she's only got, I think at the time, a couple of weeks left on her prison sentence. And Casey decides to, after a lot of thought, decides to take on this family. I get the impression it's the most challenging placement she's ever had, because she's the foster carer to Seth and also to Tommy. Seth has some very, shall we say, aggressive behavioural issues, and Tommy is a 5-day-old baby. And then when the mother comes along a little bit later, it's almost like Casey feels like she's babysitting her as well, because she's only 19. She's a very young mother, and especially to have a 4-year-old son. And Casey has basically got to watch these three 24/7. The mother is not allowed to leave the house with the children on her own. Very intense. And one thing I found so admirable about this is that Casey, several points throughout the book, admitted her own downfalls. First of all, frequently expressing doubt in taking on the placement, because that's how challenging it was, and you could feel that as a reader. A lot of these situations were exceptionally difficult, and I just couldn't imagine how I would have dealt with that. And even Casey, with her years and years of experience at this point, came up against a lot of difficult situations with I'd say with Jenna, the mother, and with Seth. Tommy just seemed like an absolute delight in this. What can a 5-day-old baby do? And I think that's really admirable that on more than one occasion she admitted her own doubt, she admitted her own flaws. And I'm not saying that foster carer memoirs usually make the foster carer out to be perfect, because that's not the case. But given the nature of foster caring, and that you have to be a really positive role model, and you have to be a certain kind of person to be approved for it, by which I mean really you have to be as squeaky clean as possible. Certainly when you're dealing with, say, troubled teens, it's just refreshing to actually have one admitting that they're less than perfect. It just makes it all the more relatable. The pacing of this is brilliant. It doesn't drag. It's very well written, apart from the use of commas. Now, I like long sentences. I read a lot of Edwardian fiction where sentences ramble on and they're made of 3 or 4 clauses and there's no pause for breath at any point. But even I found this. There was a comma, and then another point, but a comma, and then we will, comma, pause, comma. Every second sentence had at least 2 commas in it. I feel like that sounds like an exaggeration, but it's not. And it's really uncomfortable to read in that aspect. But once I got about a third of the way through, I think I learned to just block it out and read the sentences the way that I would want to read them, if that makes sense. I'm sure if you're an avid reader, you'll know what I mean, how you can kind of manipulate the words in front of you to flow a little bit better. But in terms of the actual narrative structure, the introduction to the characters, how much time is spent on certain events, it flows really well, and it's really pleasing to read. As usual with these, I was devastated when it was finished. I can't wait for the next one. Obviously, this was released a couple of days ago. I don't know when the next one's out, but hopefully hopefully soon. The time difference between her last one and this one is less than a year, so maybe towards the end of this year. Mummy Please Don't Leave was better than I expected, and I expected it to be decent. Really pleased with it. Still on a little bit of a high from reading it, actually. If you are into this kind of book, definitely you'll want to read this one. You don't need to read them in order, but particularly with this one, because there's not much reference to, well, previous books. There is one character you'll meet, one individual you'll meet who was mentioned previously, but I would still recommend going back to the beginning and reading them all because they're brilliant. Mummy Please Don't Leave, better than expected. Really fantastically happy with it.